People need to open up their eyes about what is really happening with this Venezuelan situation. Now, President Trump went ahead and closed the airspace over Venezuela. Remember, they do not control Venezuela. Venezuela is a sovereign country. But this is what they do. It's all about them going in, the United States going in and trying to steal Venezuelan oil. It's not about drug trafficking. And remember what Noam Chomsky always tell us about using the media to manufacture consent. And this is what they are doing right now in the United States and around the world, right? If it wasn't for social media, which has more or less control, like less control on what you're gonna hear from people in regards to the truth, we wouldn't know what's going on. Let's listen to Al Jazeera English, their program, The Listening Post, to hear more or less of what is truly happening with this situation. Let's go.
For weeks now, the United States has been on what it calls a counter-narcotics mission against Venezuela. Lethal force policies, including drone strikes against alleged drug smugglers off the country's coast. If only that narrative was accurate. There is no evidence that the boats targeted had any drugs on board. What is well documented is Washington's determination to provoke a regime change in Venezuela, which just happens to sit on the world's biggest oil reserves. The Trump administration's push to frame it as a narco-terrorist state, language that many mainstream outlets habitually adopt, echoes what we have heard before. And it's reminiscent of the run-up to the 2003 invasion of Iraq, when flimsy intelligence and official talking points helped manufacture public consent long before the first bombs were dropped.
That's what I'm talking about, people. Weapons of mass destruction. Remember that presentation Colin Powell made in front of the United Nations? This is how these people are. They always come up and make up things to support their agenda. It's always about oil. Always about oil.
Meanwhile, in Venezuela, ordinary people, including journalists, are paying the price. Starting with the historical precedents, the last time America sent this many warships into the Caribbean Sea was 63 years ago, the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962.
It's one of the last chapters in the offensive threat from Cuba.
Back then, the U.S. was guarding against a nuclear threat and the Soviet Union. This time, the threat is from drug traffickers coming out of Venezuela, or so Americans have been told. It's why the U.S. has bombed Venezuelan boats, killed dozens of people while providing zero evidence against those targeted. And if that fails to add up for you, a far more plausible explanation was offered by this U.S. Congresswoman.
Venezuela, for the American oil companies, will be a field day because it will be more than $1 trillion in economic activity.
She's openly stating, come, take the oil. This is a bonanza for U.S. oil corporations. Usually you had these kind of coup regime change fomenting attempts behind the scenes, but now the empire has never been more naked about its intention here, about just stealing the vast oil reserves, and they don't care if thousands of Venezuelans die as a result.
This story stretches back to 2002 and Presidents George W. Bush and Hugo Chavez. Chavez's leftist agenda did not sit well with Washington, which backed a coup attempt that year that ultimately failed.
I don't know if they don't want their American citizens to see that a government is supposed to look after its citizens and make sure they are okay. Anytime you have a country that uses the natural resources of that country to take care of its citizens, the United States come in to try and stop it. They don't want their citizens in the United States to see that the government is supposed to take care of its citizens. Look how many people go into bankruptcy when they get sick. And the United States is the richest country in the world, right? Venezuela is trying to use the resources of the country to take care of its citizens, and they don't like it. I am not saying that there isn't bad things going on in Venezuela, corruption and so on and so forth, but the United States government don't like it when a government try to properly take care of its citizens.
In 2019, during Donald Trump's first term, the U.S. got behind an effort to replace Chavez's successor, Nicolas Maduro, with a conservative, Juan Guaido, which also failed. Waiting in the wings this time is opposition figure Maria Corina Machado, who was recently awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The other twist, the U.S. now says Venezuela is a narco state. It has designated a group called the Cartel de los Soles, the cartel of...
Can you imagine they went in, pick a person, Juan Guaido, and say, this man is gonna be the president. No election, nothing. And this is how the United States operate. It's not good.
The Suns as a terrorist operation. There is no denying that corruption in Venezuela is real. That has been documented by NGOs like Transparency International and the UN's International Narcotics Control Board. But analysts argue that the ties between the state and the drug trade are nowhere near deep enough to justify the bombing of at least 22 boats, the killing of 80 people and counting, attacks that under international law are illegal.
This is something in an almost postmodern way that the Trump administration has incepted into reality. This started out, the Cartel de Soles, as a slang term to describe Venezuelan military personnel who had grown corrupt for allowing the low levels of drug smuggling in Venezuela. A colloquial turn of phrase laundered through journalism over the years.
So this group we're talking about, Cartel de los Soles.
Drug cartel, Cartel de los Soles.
Venezuela's infamous Cartel de los Soles.
To now become a fixed idea invention of the Trump administration to justify a regime change in Venezuela.
This notion of narco-terrorist is similar to just the notion of terrorism in the American mainstream media and Hollywood propaganda. This has always been kind of this villainous character
plata o plomo
that agitates people around the notion that, yes, we can go in and we can commit war crimes. It's no different than any other propaganda that sowed the seeds for horrific U.S. intervention in the past.
Because the U.S. can't simply argue we want a regime change. They have to argue, as they did in the case of Panama and Noriega, that the leader of the country is a cartel leader, a narco-terrorist, by labeling an entire country and demonizing Venezuelans in the process.
The Trump administration's position on Venezuela, that it is a narco state, is easy for any journalist to debunk. Far more cocaine comes into the U.S. from Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador. But none of those governments can satisfy America's addiction to another commodity, oil, the way Venezuela's can. It is sitting on more reserves than any country on the planet.
Okay, now you can see why they are threatening to go in Venezuela or do a regime change so they can get the oil.
Including Iraq, which the Bush administration invaded in 2003, a war far too many American news outlets, the New York Times among them, helped sell to the U.S. public. through the peddling of the WMD lies, the weapons of mass destruction that simply did not exist. History has a way of repeating itself. Sometimes it needs a little help. And many U.S. news outlets, even those that can be hostile to Donald Trump, are providing it once again.
The U.S. media is now, even as it presents critical coverage, noting the lack of evidence for what the Trump administration is saying, it still tends to default to the terms that he uses, that Maduro is a head of a narco state.
Drug cartels go out of business, so does the Maduro regime.
That Maduro is involved in drug trafficking.
President Nicolas Maduro, who the Trump administration claims is responsible for trafficking drugs into the U.S.
That there are narco cartels operating off Venezuelan soil.
The Pentagon says these forces will enhance and augment existing capabilities to disrupt narcotics trafficking.
They're not doing investigative journalism. The only one that did investigative journalism was AP when they sent reporters out to where these boats had left and documented these were just ordinary people trying to make a living. They weren't gang members, and that's the sad reality. We focus on political doctrine coming out of Washington that says that they want to kill them, and that's the damage that this language has on a society, on a community.
The New York Times is the liberal bastion in America. All liberals read it, it's their Bible. Look at the Iraq War, look at the New York Times lies for that. What is the New York Times saying today? Brett Stevens arguing there's vital American interests at stake. What are those American interests? Not freedom and democracy. Oil, oil, oil. They're not even trying to hide it anymore.
The New York Times really never met a war it wouldn't manufacture consent for. Not just in Venezuela during the 2002 coup, but also the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, the war on terror more generally. So you can really fairly rely on mainstream media, particularly mainstream liberal media, to find a way to oppose the last war, but support the current or the future one.
We put that to the New York Times, which published that op-ed on the case for overthrowing Nicolas Maduro. Its response: our newsroom journalists report on the facts and details. Our opinion section offers a range of perspectives and ideas to help our audiences make up their own minds.
So, Guru family, if you want to check out the full report, you can check it out on Al Jazeera English. We're gonna take a look at another example which will clearly show that this current United States government especially is not looking about the best interests about its citizens in terms of whether or not they consume drugs. It's all about oil. Let's take a look at this former Honduran president, Juan Orlando Hernandez. This man is the former president of Honduras. He was president from 2014 to 2022. He was extradited to the United States in March 2024 and was convicted of 3 counts of drug trafficking, weapons conspiracy, and in June the same year, he was sentenced to 45 years in prison. Now, if it was about drugs, right, this man is a convicted drug trafficker, right, or is mixed up in drug trafficking. Yet, last week, the United States President Donald Trump said he will grant a full and complete pardon to this man. So there you go. It's not about drug trafficking. It's all about serving the United States agenda. And in this case, with Venezuela, it's all about the oil. It's all about the oil. So we are over on Wikipedia. So you guys can go over there and check it out for yourself. But this is what's going on. This is what's going on. You can go over Wikipedia and check it out for yourself. So see, this is it down here. He was found guilty, right, of drug trafficking. This is it, right? So you guys can see 45 years in prison. So you guys can go and check it out for yourself. Anyway, Guru family, leave your thoughts below. Thanks for watching. Please thumbs up, share, subscribe, watch another video. And again, always do your research and use social media. Don't only depend on the mainstream media for your information, because they don't do investigative journalism anymore. Leave your thoughts below. Always want more, and make sure you are worth more. I will catch you in the next one.